So one of my favorite shows is the show Alone. In fact, I think you were the one who first told me about the show. It's really fascinating. In fact, you were watching it last night. We the way the show works is you take 10 contestants, and they usually take them out to like Canada, some really remote area. They drop them off in their own spots. So everybody's spread out. They can bring only 10 items with them from an approved list of items. Things like a tarp, a knife, a bow and arrow. So just basic survival type of materials. And it's a competition to see who will last the longest, who can survive with their skills and their wits against the elements. It's really fascinating. And for me, somebody who would never be able to win that show, I watch it and I immediately have expert opinions on all of the contestants. And in the first episode, I'll always identify like 2 or 3 people that I'm like, aha, they're gonna be the best. If I had to put money, I'm gonna choose these 2 or 3 people. So far, I have gotten none of them right. All of the people that I immediately think are so great don't make it to the end. Because what I found and what I'm learning and watching the show now that I've seen a few seasons of it is you need 2 things to win. Number 1, you do need technical skills, and everybody on that show knows what they're doing. They're not just random people off the street. A lot of them have been in the special forces. They do survival training. Like, they know how to live off the land. But the second thing you need is willpower. Mm-hmm. You need a strong mentality. I remember the last season I watched, the guy who ended up winning, I would have put him in the bottom 5 at the beginning of the show. I thought he had no chance. He got to day 50, and he decided, I think in order to win, I've got to make it about 75 days. By the way, this is for like $500,000, some seasons even $1 million for the winner. Everybody else gets nothing. So he decided, I'm going to go on a 3-week fast. He just curled up in his sleeping bag in his shelter and did nothing. Just conserved his caloric, his caloric output, and just fasted for 21 days. But that whole time, as you're watching the footage of him, he just keeps talking about what he's going to do when he wins the money, how it's going to change his life, how it's so meaningful to him, how this is going to give him the opportunity that he's always been looking for. And he talks about how he grew up in his past and how he came from a situation where he didn't have these opportunities, and he was just so focused on it. And sure enough, he's the one who lasted longer than everybody else. And what's fascinating to me is I think that's a huge lesson for us when it comes to the area of finances. You can have all the technical skills in the world, you can know all the ins and outs, but if you don't have the right mentality, to put it a better way, if you don't have a compelling why behind the decisions you're making and the way that you're living your life, you're most likely setting yourself up for failure. The people that are most successful in their finances have both. They have a good technical working knowledge of what they're doing, but they have a deep, compelling why that drives them forward in those decisions.
Yeah, and your daily commitments have to be attached to that why. And we all get this in other areas of our life. You get this in a diet, or some of you guys and girls love to work out. But what keeps you going daily? What gets you to the gym? What tells you to say no to that breadstick and yes to that salad? What is it? It's that compelling why. It's that more ethereal goal that's way out there somewhere, but can only be achieved through daily commitment to that why. So in today's lesson, we'll talk a little bit about that the why is what drives. The why is what drives. It's not to say those daily decisions aren't important. No, they are vitally important. And starting small is essential to the process and all the consistency. But none of that's going to work unless there's that compelling why that drives it all.
The research has shown that a lot of times we try to go from 0 to 60. We say, I've not gone on a diet in 5 years. Tomorrow, I'm going on this crash diet.
Right.
I've never worked out a day in my life. I'm going to do this hardcore 90-day workout starting tomorrow. And the research shows us that small, incremental, sustainable changes are a lot more powerful over time than trying to go from here all the way to here in one huge step. And that works in our finances as well. There's a great book. It's called Start With Why by author Simon Sinek. In fact, actually, if you want to watch a great clip on YouTube, don't pause this lesson just yet, but later go on YouTube and search Simon Sinek Start With Why. And it's about a 17-minute long TED Talk where he discusses how great leaders and great companies start with why. Everybody knows what they do, but great leaders and great companies know why they do it. And he gives this example about Apple. Apple is one of the greatest success stories of any American company that's ever existed. And Steve Jobs was a revolutionary leader, but he painted a very vivid picture to his employees and to his company about why they did what they did. Plenty of companies make phones and computers and tablets, but what is Apple's motto? Think different. They believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in being creative, and that's why we make devices that are beautifully designed and intuitive. For us, in our finances, instead of starting with what, and what mutual fund should I buy, and what type of mortgage should I get, and should I have a credit card or not have a credit card? What bank should I? Those are all good questions, and there's a time and place to answer those questions. But before we can answer those properly, we need to take a step back and ask ourselves, why? Why is money important to me?
Yeah, that doesn't just apply to finances. It's like we want this paint by numbers, tell me what to do, formulaic approach to life. And that's really a lazy way to think. And quite honestly, it's not the way God wants us to grow. In our Christian lives, we can all, and I think we're all probably familiar with churches that do this, just tell me what to do or give me a list of rules or expectations, but that's not growth. There's no organic relationship there. No, it's when we find our motivation, our compelling love for Christ, our motivation, our desire to honor God by serving people. When we find our motivation, and that motivation then can be the compulsion, can be what actually drives our behaviors, then there's a much greater sustainability there, and then there's value in all those little things we do. And there's not a cookie cutter approach to everybody has to invest this way, and everybody has to budget just so, and everybody has to follow this debt management program, or no, it's not that simple. The simplicity is not in the what. The simplicity is having a driving why.
And if you came to this course hoping to get that on a silver platter, to just, hey, tell me the 5 secrets, the 5 things that I have to do, and I don't have to worry about anything else, I'm sorry to tell you, it doesn't work that way. I wish it were that simple. What I hope that you will get by the end of these lessons is a powerful framework that will reshape your view and your attitude of money, that's going to take you to another level that you never could have gotten to if I just told you, just do these 5 things and that's all you need to worry about.
If you don't have a compelling why, something bigger than yourself, then you'll fall into a much more superficial way of looking at your resources in your life. It reminds me of that famous Will Rogers quote, too many people spend money they do not have to buy things they don't need, to impress people they don't like. And think about that. If we don't have a compelling why, then we kind of just devolve into this mindset of, well, the Joneses have it, my neighbor has it, my coworker did it, and I need to get it because they got it, or I need to spend it because they spend it, or I need to find value in what they say was fun or successful. And wow, what a very superficial way to live. And here's the sad part about it. Then you end up doing all of that, getting those things, and then finding out, well, I didn't want the things I got. Why? Because I never answered the bigger question. What does money mean? We talked about that last lesson. What's my responsibility to it? But then really, what is my personal financial why?
Yeah, it reminds me of the Stephen Covey quote where he says, if the ladder is leaning against the wrong wall, then every step you take is just getting you to the wrong place faster. I want you to move from being reactive in your finances to being proactive. You think about leaning that ladder up against the wrong wall. Like, what are the walls that people are leaning their ladder up against when they're gonna get to the top of it and they're gonna realize, oh, this is not the place that I wanted to be in the first place.
Right. And we can do that in the corporate ladder, corporate success. If I just get the next promotion, or the next vacation, or whatever it is that you feel like is going to bring value and worth and happiness and satisfaction, only to realize that when you climb the top of that ladder and you get there, it's like, oh, this wasn't really what I wanted. What I really wanted was a sense of belonging or friendship or true satisfaction, that my life was meaningful. And boy, we need to spend more time on the front end figuring out who we are, why we're here, how my money, my resources, my time, my talent plays into that, so that my daily decisions are going to be a ladder that's leaning against a wall that I want to be leaning against, so that when I take steps up that ladder, I'm taking steps toward greater security in things that really matter.
So how do we do this? How do you begin that journey of discovering what it is that is important to you, why money is important? In his book, The One-Page Financial Plan, author Carl Richards, a book, by the way, it'll be in the participant guide resources. I want you to check that book out. He talks about the first step to building that one-page financial plan is to create a powerful, personalized financial why statement. I want to help you with that today. There are 3 questions there in your participant guide that I want you to consider and think deeply about, and then give some answers to. Okay, so let's go to the first question, and that is this: what about money is important to you? What about money is important to you? Now, your initial reaction and the thing that you initially write will not be the correct answer. You say, wait, Nate, are you giving us trick questions? No, I'm not. But this is going to be a process. This first question is a profound and a deep question, but it's going to take some time to wrestle with and to be honest with. So as you consider that question, what about money is important to you? Write down the first thing that comes to mind. Now, with that answer, I want you to follow up with why. And then to that answer, follow up with why. And do this 3 or 4 or 5 times. And what you'll find is you're getting closer to the truth every time. Let me give you an example. What about money is important to you? Well, I need money to pay my bills. Sure, that's a correct answer, but that's not really the reason. Okay, why is paying bills important to you? Well, I need to make sure that things are taken care of and my family is secure and that things don't fall behind. Okay, good. Why is it important that things don't fall behind and that you need to take care of your family? Well, growing up, our financial situation was kind of chaotic, and it just seemed to bring a lot of stress and anxiety in the life of my parents, and that kind of seeped down to me as a kid because I kind of saw them struggling, and I don't want to go through that. Oh, okay. So you see how we're getting closer to the real answer, and that is, I want to make sure that I'm creating a safe and comfortable and peaceful environment in my family structure so that money does not become a point of division or a barrier in our relationships. You see where we're getting with this? So we have to go a few layers deep. So here's what I want you to do right now. Take a moment. We're going to pause the video, and I want you to spend a few minutes considering that question and arriving at a conclusion for what you would say is important to you about money. Let's move now to question number 2. 5 years from now, let's think five years ahead from now, what would need to change in my financial life in order for me to feel like I am closer to my financial goals? So, as you think about where you currently stand, and then paint a picture in the future of where you would like to be, what are the 1 or 2 or 3 things that immediately come to mind that you say, you know what, this could be better. I wish I would do better. I wish I could do better in my savings. I wish I could get out of debt. I wish that my spouse and I would be able to have better communication. I wish that I would track my money a little bit better. Whatever those things are, start to write those down. What are the 1, 2, 3 areas that are most important to you that you would love to see change in the next 5 years? And now question number 3. And if you'll notice that these questions are getting, I believe, progressively more tricky, but also more profound. The third question is a 2-parter. This comes from Jim Collins' book, Good to Great. It's the 2010 test. Question number 1, if you had $20 million, what would change about your life? So don't get too hung up on the $20 million number. Make it whatever number you want to be.
I like 20 million. That's a good number.
Make it 20 million, make it 200 million, make it 2 billion. In other words, here's what we're getting at. Enough money that you are financially secure for the rest of your life. You don't have to work anymore. You don't have to worry about where money is coming from. You have true financial independence. What would change? Monday rolls around and you don't have to go to work. What would you do? What would you spend your time on? Think very carefully through the things and paint a picture of the life that would be uniquely your own. And now, after you've taken some time to go over that question, here's the second part. What if you only had 10 years left? Let's imagine that you go to the doctor and the doctor says, I have some good and bad news. The bad news is that you have a terminal disease and you have 10 years left. The good news is that it will not affect your current health and mobility. You will experience the same quality of life that you do now for the next 10 years, but you have a limited time frame. Now, how would your life be different? With that in mind, knowing that you have just this short window of time, what would you do differently? What would you stop doing? What would you do that you've said you've been planning to do for years now, and you'd finally say, okay, that would be the motivation for me to finally make that change? I don't know what that looks like for you, but I want you to take a few minutes and think through that question and put down what comes to mind for those 2 parts.
So those are compelling questions. $20 million, 10 years of life. But they're only as good as our willingness to tell ourselves the truth. I love that quote from Bill W., the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous. He said, all progress begins by telling the truth. And unless we're true to ourselves, true to our own conscience, then none of this is going to work. We have to be honest about who we are, what matters, what our relationship with the Lord is, all of it. So I would encourage you, as you answer these questions, don't fall into the trap of, well, this is a good answer, or this is what I should say. No, be honest about where you are, what is true, because that's the only starting point that's going to work in this process.
So your assignment for this week is to write out your own financial why statement. And what that's going to be is a sentence, 2 at the most, try to keep it to 1 if you can, that encapsulates why money is important to you. And you've got those 3 questions. Those should give you a lot of fuel for thought in thinking how you want to craft that statement. Your answers to those 3 questions will give you tremendous insight into how you want to encapsulate that in just a few words. So here's a good prompt to get you started. If you're still struggling a little bit, saying, Nate, I think I know what you're talking about, help me a little bit more. The role of money in my life is to, or the purpose of money in my life is to, ... and there's your sentence. So it could be, the purpose of money in my life is to travel and do missions work. The purpose of money in my life is to leave an inheritance to my kids and never be a burden to them. Hint, hint. Or mine.
Give me the 20 million.
My statement of financial purpose is I want to have a flexible schedule, to travel with my family, and to be generous with my time and money. So what is it going to look like for you?
What statement will you come up with? Make it uniquely your own, and like we talked about, be willing to be painfully honest about what is important to you.
So great advice. And let me just say this. If you're a couple watching this, it's probably important that you develop this statement individually first. So just do that. Just don't compare notes. Think through it, pray through it, give it some deliberation, and come up with your own financial why statement. But then bring your statements together and talk about the process of how you developed it and the whys. And then, if you can, take those statements and merge them together. And I think what you're going to find is there's probably some really cool similarities, and there might be a thing or two that help you, just as a married couple, understand a little bit more about your spouse. So try to get those to jive together as a couple. The other thing I think is important to clarify right now is you're not etching this in stone. So when you develop a financial why statement, it's not that, oh, I developed this why statement and I vow this vow to the Lord and I better have to always live by this. You're not writing scripture. What you're doing is you're really taking a snapshot of where you are right now in your life and what's important, but some things might change. There are some circumstances beyond your control that might change your financial why statement. You might think differently when you have children or grandchildren. You might think differently as you grow in grace and become more aware of Bible principles. It might change your why. And that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. Start somewhere. That's really the point. Start somewhere by going through this mental exercise.
So take some time now in class to start working on that financial why statement, but your homework for this week is to take 15, 20, 30 minutes sometime this week to talk about that. If you're a couple, have that time of conversation. If you're single, maybe have a conversation with a family member or a friend to help you maybe solidify that statement. But this is a mandatory assignment because we're going to need it for next week. Next week, we're going to go from taking the theoretical and go right into the practical. Now that you've developed a financial why statement and you know what direction you want to start orienting your finances, we're going to talk about how you can take that financial why statement and then use that to create specific, actionable financial goals to take you to that next level in your finances.
And that's it for me for a few weeks. Nate is going to take you through some really practical things and some how-tos, and that is not my expertise. I'm good at the philosophy stuff. So I'm going to see you back in a few weeks. I'm going to check up on you and get your homework done. And thank you for letting me be a part. I hope that this has been helpful, and we'll see you in a few weeks.